Hello and welcome to Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. On today's show, we're here with Roy White, former New York Yankee, two-time World Series champion, and he's here to tell us about his journey from a Yankee to author and philanthropist. Roy is the author of From Compton to the Bronx, an autobiography of his rise to the big leagues. After huge success, Roy wanted to give back, and the Roy White Foundation provides financial assistance to aspiring students who have financial complications, just like he did growing up. Roy, we are so excited to have you here on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I just appreciate that even after your illustrious Yankees career and everything you accomplished after, you still call New Jersey home.
Yes, I grew up in Los Angeles, California, but I only spent my first 18 or 19 years there. Once I became a regular Yankee in 1966, I never went back to California. So I'm a solid New Jersey guy.
Before we dive into the book and everything that you do, let's just talk about that connection you have here to the Garden State, because you could have moved back. A lot of Yankees do after their playing career is over, but you put down roots here, you raised your family here, and you continue to stay here. Why?
Well, I think the one of the important things then was financially, it paid off for you to spend the winter here in New York because you could do speaking engagements and stuff like that. And when I came up as a rookie, we were only making like 77,000 a year was the minimum salary at that time. So we weren't making a whole lot of money. So most of us needed an off-season job. And so there was more opportunities for me to stay here in New Jersey over the winter to try to make some extra money to make ends meet.
Once the jersey gets you, like there's no escaping it. So, and you are
No,
testament
it's
to
a
that.
great state. I've never regretted it. I still don't like winter too much being a Californian, but all in all, it's really been great.
Well, that's what spring training is for, right? And I know you go down to Tampa and you mentor
Oh,
and
yeah.
you still stay very involved with your New York Yankees to this day.
Anywhere from 10 to 20 times a season, I would be up in one of the suites signing autographs, meeting people. Uh, Also, baseball clinics and stuff like that keep me connected to baseball.
Well, you documented your love and journey for baseball with your new book, From Compton to the Bronx. What inspired you to put this journey to paper?
A couple of years ago, I did a podcast, and the guy that did the podcast had a friend that lived in Ridgewood that had authored a few books. And that friend contacted him and said, "Hey, I would like to do Roy's autobiography. Uh, and he'd like to get my number, or was I interested?" So I thought about it and I said, "Well, let me talk to him." And I gave him a call and we got together and I said, "Well, I really want to do a book uh, just about me and my journey, something I can leave behind, for my family. My grandkids and their kids would have something to see what I did coming up to the Yankees." And that's what he wanted to do. He said, "That's exactly what we're going to do. Exactly what you want. You can tell your story and all the things that happened to you." That's what inspired me to do that. And I hope some young athletes that are involved in sports, especially baseball, would have some inspiration by reading what I went through and what it took to get up to the top.
Tell us about the process though, because you sat down, you got your thoughts out. How long did it take? And was it weird being so open about certain things?
Well, we actually got it done in 9 months. I think we started getting together in November of 2021, and I think we were finished by the end of July. So we just kind of went chronologically, starting from my early years, growing up in Compton, and then proceeding to my signing, how I got signed by the Yankees, then my life going to the minor leagues and what happened to me in the minor leagues, and then finally getting up to the Yankees, and then the Yankee years, and then after the Yankees going to Japan, which is a big chapter in the book, and my life over in Japan, and then coming back and rejoining the Yankees as a coach and later a scout and assistant general manager to Clyde King. So we went through that process, and a lot of these were sessions where we would meet at Panera's up in Ramsey, New Jersey, and we'd get a table in the back a little after the lunch hour, and he'd have his tape recorder out. And I would remember, I would think about what I was going to talk about, some of the things that happened to me, and that's the way it proceeded. And we got it done pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, that's like record breaking because I have written a book and it took like 5 years to do. So, I
Oh,
mean, to do it in 9 months is pretty remarkable.
you probably had a lot more to tell, maybe, than I did.
No, definitely not. But so I don't want you to give too much away about all the little tidbits in the book, but let's
Right.
give our viewers just a broad overlook as to, we'll start out with your childhood growing up in Compton. What did you talk about in the book, and what did you want your readers to take away from that upbringing?
When I got out to Compton, and that was probably around the time I was going to fifth or sixth grade, and we settled there. And that's when I really got interested in baseball. There was a lot of other kids in the neighborhood that liked to play baseball, and we didn't have Major League Baseball in LA at that time. We had Pacific Coast League Baseball, which was Triple A. We had the Los Angeles Angels, and we had the Hollywood Stars, and we all watched those teams. And we saw the game of the week on every Saturday. So we watched the Yankees and all the big league teams, and we liked to imitate the different players. And that's how I got involved in switch hitting, because when I had to be Mickey Mantle or Stan Musial or Ted Williams, I would hit left-handed when we had our backyard games that we invented. And a funny story that I'll tell you is that I was not a Yankee fan. Most of us were not Yankee fans out in California. We probably rooted for the Dodgers, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and some of the other teams. I was a Cincinnati Reds fan, in fact, because of the colorful uniforms that they had, and they had the sleeveless uniforms. So it was quite shocking to me when I graduated from high school. And I knew I was going to get a professional contract because I had gotten pretty good playing baseball, and was not expecting the first guy to knock on my door was a scout from the Yankees. And he said, Roy, we've been scouting you throughout your high school career, and I've seen all your games. And I was amazed. I've never seen this guy before. I said, where did this guy come from? The Yankees? You got to be kidding me. And he says, we want to sign you to a professional contract. You're the type of guy we'd like to have in the Yankees organization. And we're going to give you $4,000 to sign with the Yankees. So immediately there was some disappointment there. I'm thinking, only four? I think I'm going to get better than that. But nobody else had come by at that time. I didn't have any other offers. So wanting to be a professional baseball player, here's your opportunity, should give it a shot. So I decided, New York Yankees, I'm going to be in the World Series every year once I get up to the Yankees. And I signed the contract. And it took 11 years before I finally got to a World Series.
But you got there, and we'll definitely touch on that. And thank you for sharing that insight. I mean, it's just so fascinating. I'm always so intrigued about the beginnings of all these household name players that we all grew up with and loved, and what a story that you have. I want to take a step back and touch on how you're from a mixed race family. And I know that the racial undertones of that followed you throughout your life and career. And you touch on that in the book. What other times did it become an issue for you?
Growing up in Compton, the school that I went to, Centennial High, it was pretty mixed there. We never really kind of confronted any segregation things, like head on. We probably read about it. So it didn't hit me head on until after I signed that contract. I had my first flight to the spring training camp. Spring training camp was in Haines City, Florida. So I had to fly out to Tampa, first plane ride of my life, first time on a jet. That was really exciting. And So I get into Tampa and I had to take a bus ride to get to Haines City. So I get to Haines City, and instructions were to report to the Haines City Motel. And I reported to the Haines City Motel, checked in, and I had a roommate there. His name was Dave Pavletic, Polish guy from New York. And he gave me the rundown on what the proceedings were going to be every day. He says we get up at 6:30, we go and we have breakfast, and then we go to the complex, and we work out and we train, and that's where all the minor league teams were. And at that time, you had rookie league, you had D, you had C, you had B, you had A, double A, triple A. So you had 7 classifications you were going to have to get through before you're going to get to the major leagues. But Haines City only had the lower levels. So this was D, C, and B were the players that were working out down there. So I'm down there working out every day. And there's other black players down there from all over the United States. And one day, after a couple of weeks, one of the black players, his name was Leroy Reams, he comes up to me during a break, and he says, "Hey, Roy, I see you here every day working out and out here playing the games and everything." He says, "I don't see you at night, having dinner or anything. Where are you staying?" And I said, "Well, I'm at the Haines City Motel." He says, "Roy, the Haines City Motel, that's white only. You're not supposed to be there." I said, "Well, I don't know, I'm there, that's what's happening." So I was very light skinned being of mixed race. And at that time, my hair was kind of straight and wavy, a little curly. So I could have passed for, like a light skinned Spanish guy or white Spanish. And maybe that's what they thought. But I ended up being there the whole spring training. But now we break camp, and that year I was supposed to go to D-Ball, Idaho Falls in Idaho. So I thought I was going to D classification. But that spring, they let the managers pick some of the players that they wanted. And the manager for the B team, which was Greensboro in North Carolina, picked me to play second base because he liked the way I looked in that spring. I really played great. And so we took a bus ride once we broke camp up to Greensboro, North Carolina. And when we pulled up to the hotel after like a 12-hour bus ride from Florida, all the players started getting off the bus. And the manager says, "Hey, Roy, you wait here with Jim." And Jim Horsford was a black Puerto Rican. And he said, "You two guys wait here." And everybody got off. And a taxi came for us, and they picked us up, and they took us across the tracks to the black section of town. And so I had to stay in a home, and the other guy, Jim, he was in another home. So that was a reality that I wasn't going to get to stay with my teammates in the same hotel. So that kind of hits you hard, when you finally find that out. And then later on, I found out that when we were traveling, that I couldn't even go into the restaurants. The guys would have to bring me food out, for Jim and I. So it was pretty disappointing, and I remember one particular day we'd stopped in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was sitting on the bus, and everybody got off the bus, and I was sitting there by myself, and I said, I'm going to get off the bus and look around. And I'm walking by a restaurant, and I looked in, and I was hungry, and I saw that the waitresses were black. So I said, I could probably eat in here. So I went in, I sat down, and there was a menu on the table, and I started looking at it. And I'm there for like 10 minutes, and nobody's come by to take an order. I'm still waiting, and it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes passed by. And finally, the waitress came over, and I said, "Yeah, I'd like to get a cheeseburger and some fries and a Coke." And she says, "Well, you can't have it. You can get it to take out, but you can't eat it in here. We can't serve you." So immediately I felt kind of nauseous, and I got up and I left, and I went back to the bus without eating anything. And I just kind of felt sick in the pit of my stomach. And I just said, how could they have blacks working in here and serving, but we still can't eat in here? That doesn't make sense,
It just is baffling that back then, all of this was such an issue. Thank God. I mean, I know there's issues nowadays too, but
Right.
the players now aren't encountering that. I mean, it's kind of just everybody as one.
Yeah, it actually took, I think it was 3 years before I actually stayed in the same hotels with my teammates.
And I'm sure in your locker rooms, though, it was never an issue because, again, who cares what race you are? As long as you're pitching well, hitting well, fielding well, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we were all teammates. There was a couple of instances while I was in the minors where I remember when I was in the Florida State League, and we stopped at a roadside diner, and the guys got out and they went in to get something to eat. I couldn't go in, and my other teammate couldn't go in. They asked the guys, "We have two other players. We want them to come in to eat with us." And the guy said, "No, they can only have a takeout." The whole team left the restaurant without ordering and came back, and we traveled on.
I have to think, though, all of this adversity, unnecessary adversity, mind you, had to thicken up your skin for when you did make the big leagues.
To get through that and then finally get up and play in New York. And New York is probably the toughest place to play Major League Baseball because expectations are the highest because New York fans are used to having all the World Series winners throughout history, the most, and having some of the best players in baseball history. So when things aren't going well in New York, you're going to hear it from the fans. And if you let it get to you, you're not going to last very long.
At least in the 70s, though, yes, you had to deal with the fans and their expectations, but you didn't have the media as much as it is now with all the different platforms, radio. So that might have been a little gentler, right?
No question about it. With social media now, and everybody has a cell phone with a camera, and they're everywhere, and everything you knew does not go unnoticed. So players of my era probably got away with a lot more things than guys do now.
I think if cell phones were around back then, the Bronx Zoo wouldn't have been the Bronx Zoo, not by a long shot. And your owner, George Steinbrenner, would have been an even bigger lightning rod and controversial figure than he even was back then. Reflect on having a figure like George as your boss.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He'd have been under more scrutiny under today's circumstances. But I do give him the credit for bringing the Yankees back into prominence. CBS owned the ball club when I first joined the club. And the CBS did not put any money into the Yankees. We weren't making trades, but we weren't getting the best young players. So when George came in, immediately we could see that things were going to be different. He was going to demand excellence, and he wanted to bring the Yankees back to a World Series again. And finally, we got to a World Series in 1976. So all that credit has to go to George.
Well, as a fan growing up in the 90s, I got a little taste of what he was like. But my father always tells me, oh, those 70s teams, nobody will ever top that.
I hear that a lot from the fans also. Those are some of their favorite teams was the 76, 77, 78 Yankees. And it's great memories for me. Or down to some of the fantasy cabs. So we have pretty close relationships.
Who was your favorite teammate to play with?
Well, early on, it would be Horace Clarke. When I first came up, Horace Clarke and I were roommates, and he unfairly gets, they blame him for the bad years. They call it the Horace Clarke years, but Horace was really a pretty decent ball player if you look at his stats and what he did. But we were really tight friends. We both loved jazz music, and we were roommates. And when we went on road trips, he would bring his records and I would bring mine, and we would listen to music until it was time to go to the ballpark. And after Horace, later on, Lou Piniella, Chris Chambliss, Thurman Munson, Willie Randolph, they were all very close friends of mine. Thurman, I sat next to him for the 10 years that he played with the Yankees, and we were very close, along with Chris, who sat on my right.
Who do you think of the teams that came after you, the 80s, 90s, et cetera, would have fit in with your team?
I think, well, the team of the 90s under Joe Torre, you had Bernie and you had O'Neill and you had Tino. You had guys that could hit, 20, 25, but there was nobody really hitting, 45, 50 home runs in those days. And we didn't have anybody either. Reggie's best years were between 35 and 40 home runs.
I could talk to you all day, by the way. This is so interesting. Your stint in Japan, how interesting is that you went from the Yankees to Japan? How did that all come to be?
I wanted to get kind of a lifetime contract thing where once I left the Yankees, I would, be a coach or work in the organization. And when it came down to terms, they didn't want to give me a raise, and I was a little annoyed about it. But I agreed verbally with Al Rosen, who was the general manager at that time, and Jerry Kapstein was my agent. And that was my first time having an agent in baseball. And so after I agreed, the next day I pick up the paper, and they had signed Louis Tiant for a 2-year contract at a big raise. And he was older than me because they said I was too old to get a raise. And Louis was probably 40, and he got a huge raise. And he wasn't even a Yankee yet, really. So I told Jerry, I said, I'm not signing that contract. I refused to sign that contract because they said I was too old, and Tiant got that contract, so I'm not taking it. So that's what happened there. I became a free agent, and during the winter, after the season was over, I get a call one day, and it's Lenny Randall, who I grew up in Compton with, and who played in the major leagues, and he's in Puerto Rico with Santurce playing winter ball, and he says, Roy, would you like to play winter ball? We need an outfielder. Frank Robinson's the manager, and would you like to come? We could really use you. And since I hadn't played that much in '79, I'd only got like 290 at bats. I said, maybe that's a good idea. I can get back and see if I can still do it. If I'm in good shape, I can get my swing back. So I go to Puerto Rico. I'm hitting 390, 400. I feel good. I know I can still play. And I get a call from Jerry Kapstein. He says, hey, the Tokyo Giants want to sign you to a contract, and they want to give you a 2-year deal for $500,000. So this is going to be the best contract of my life. My best salary with the Yankees was $160,000 in 1979. And I had read about guys going to Japan before, and I was kind of interested about it. So I said, well, Roy, you're not going to be in the Hall of Fame. You're a good player, but, you're not that great. So I don't have anything else to prove in Major League Baseball. Why not try Japan? So I agreed to that contract and ended up to play for the Tokyo Giants. And it turned out to be a great experience. I was there for 3 years, and I got to play with Sadaharu Oh, the home run leader of all time for Japan. And I batted cleanup. And I also batted cleanup behind Mickey Mantle in New York. So I had the opportunity to bat behind 2 of the greatest home run hitters in baseball history by going to Japan.
That is unbelievable, and probably something you weren't foreseeing.
It's pretty amazing. My $500,000 contract for 2 years is not even the minimum salary now for the lowest rookie on the Yankees. I believe the minimum is at $700,000 a year now. And back in our day, I guess Nolan Ryan became one of the first $1 million players, I believe. And all of us said to ourselves that nobody's ever going to make more than $1 million a season. So it was pretty amazing that it evolved to where it is now, where a guy can make $35 million to $40 million a year.
Roy, before we wrap, we have to talk about your foundation, the Roy White Foundation. What is it, and why was it so important for you to give back?
Yeah, well, I wanted to give back after being in baseball for so many years for the New York Yankees. I had a friend that suggested that I start a foundation, and I knew other guys that had foundations in baseball that gave back. So I decided that I would give back and help kids go to college. And I was an avid reader in high school, and I decided that we would help pay their financial expenses for books. So books and baseball was our theme, and we've been able to help over 150 kids with the book scholarships throughout the year since we started the foundation. We have a website, roywhitefoundation.org, and you can find us there if anybody would like to donate to the Roy White Foundation.
That's great, and I hope people do, and I hope people pick up the book. Where can we buy it?
There's the book right here, Roy White from Compton to the Bronx. Bookends in Ridgewood, New Jersey is carrying a large supply right now, so you can find it there. And I think Barnes and Noble and most of the people, most of the bookstores around are all have it now. It was out officially on April 11th, so there should be plenty out there.
Well, Roy, thank you so much for this. It's just been a joy getting to know you over the past couple years, seeing you at various events. Your very sweet daughter, Lorena, for getting this interview together. And all the best to you, and let's go Yankees.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. We'll see you back here next week.